This Friday marks the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. The UN launching the Unite campaign calling for global action to raise awareness and search for solutions. And on that, a global study just released by 2 UN agencies found that more than 5 women or girls were killed each hour by someone in their own family in 2021. Of all the women and girls intentionally killed last year, some 56% were killed by their intimate partners or other family members. By contrast, just 11% of all male homicides occurred at home. Well, for more details on this, I'm joined on set now by Annette Young, the host of the 51% France 24's Women's Show, and also by Fabienne El Khoury from the French group Dare to be Feminists. Annette, I'm going to start with you. What can we do to try and end this horrific epidemic?
It really is a global scourge, and I think what you need to look at is it's not just about building more emergency shelters, offering assistance or hotlines for women who are victims of domestic violence, which of course is very much needed. It's about basically flipping the script or shifting the burden and actually looking at the behaviour of men, the men who carry out these crimes, and at the same time also educating society about red flag behaviours which could lead to a woman being murdered. Now, what I'm talking about is an actual form of behaviour referred to as coercive control. And that is where men will start to control a partner through controlling their finances, isolating them from family or friends, basically making them more and more dependent on them. And in fact, there's even been an 8-stage or 8-step plan that was developed by a British criminologist by the name of Jane Monckton Smith, which explains all the various steps that leads, sadly, eventually to some form of violence and, in some cases, women being killed. And as a result, there's now a big push, but more so in very limited parts of the world and sad to say primarily in Scandinavia and English-speaking parts of the world, but that is where coercive control is becoming a sort of criminal behaviour, and therefore, governments are looking to criminalise this behaviour. England and Wales did it in 2015. Several Australian states have done it in the last 18 months or so, and they are recognising that coercive control is a precursor to some form of domestic violence. And people, for instance, in New South Wales, the state that I come from in Australia, if they are found guilty, they can face up to 7 years in jail. As I say, this is a major development in dealing with what clearly is a global epidemic, but sadly, very few countries are actually physically and legally doing anything about it.
And we'd like to think that perhaps things are improving, but the statistics don't show that. It was here in France, 20% increase year on year, with 122 women killed by their partners from September to September. What does the French government urgently need to do to address this issue, do you think?
I think the first step is they need to stop feminist washing, because it's been 5 years, and whenever the public thinks that they are doing a lot of things, because every couple of months they launch a communication campaign to say we are doing this and that, but the first thing they need to do is to put the money to invest, because feminist organizations have been 4 or 5 years that were asking for 1 billion euros only to combat domestic violence, and we're not talking about other kind of violence done to girls and women, and they have not delivered. They have delivered communication campaigns. Macron goes everywhere saying he's a feminist, but on the ground, there are not sufficient places in the shelters for women. The women who are victim of violence, they go to the cops and they have to wait 1, 2, 3 years for the process to end. So there's not enough money, there's not enough investment, and we also are receiving signals that violence against women, the fight against the violence against women is not important. He put as a interior minister a man who is accused of rape. So we need really for the government to step up, and they have not been doing that.
And Fabienne talks there about the legal systems that appear to struggle with dealing with these kinds of issues.
Absolutely, and here in France there's a big problem, as it is elsewhere. You've got outdated legislation, you've got out-of-date court structures. One country, surprising enough, in Europe that is getting it right and has done so since 2004 is Spain, where in fact they have a specific court to deal with domestic violence cases, and even the physical setup is geared to protect and look after the needs of the victim. But in the show this week, I spoke to the woman that I was talking about earlier, leading criminologist from the UK, Dr. Jane Monckton-Smith, and this is what she said about how the legal system is failing women across the world.
I keep hearing that domestic abuse and rape and sexual assault are so difficult to prosecute. I don't believe that. I don't believe they're difficult to prosecute. It just seems to be when the main victims are women, it suddenly becomes difficult to prosecute because we just don't take women and offences against women seriously enough. The adversarial systems mean that the victim gets attacked and they're already traumatised enough, and it's something that they just don't want to do, and they end up feeling like they're on trial.
Now, Fabienne, we've been speaking a lot about the situation here in France, but this is an international initiative. And if we look at Afghanistan, Ukraine and Iran, for example, we see that women are on the front lines of protests and oppression.
Yeah, and I would even say USA, where lately the fight for abortion rights also has picked up again in 2022 because of Roe versus Wade, and I think as a political agenda it works, because we are in a society where a lot of people think that women should not have as many rights, think that it's normal for some violence against women, and it's instrumentalized. And also we are in the younger generation, especially of girls and women, are now aware that they need to fight, because if they don't fight for their rights, nobody else is doing, and that the government, especially when the extreme right or in Afghanistan or Iran are there, it's a very easy political agenda to say, okay, we're gonna be conservative, we're gonna get back to traditional ways, and this is how they use the fight, the women's right to gain political power. So women and girls are now aware that they need to fight, and they are leading the fight for their rights, but also for the environment, also for political and social justice, like in Iran.
And we could say this is a sort of a cultural systemic failure in how cultures see women. How can we try and rewire the way that people...
It's a really difficult thing, but we are witnessing a gender revolution. We've got more women than ever before in the workforce. We've got more women than ever before at university. Independence, financial independence, means that those women have power which they did not have before, and society is still playing catch-up. It doesn't matter whether you're in the global north or in the global south. I mean, it's a problem across the world. And it's also about the position of men. And also just look at how recently we've only started talking about men and mental health issues. It's all about connecting the dots. If you look at how the way in which society deals with obesity, what we've done is now educate not only parents but children about healthy eating. We need to do the same about violence, about behaviour, and we need to be educating all of society to understand that a woman is not a man's property, that violence is highly inappropriate. And as I say, it's time to flip the script.
Annette Young, thank you very much. Fabienne El Khoury, thank you very much for that.